Welcome to the Inner Coach Classroom with me, Emma Benyon, a multi-certified coach and educator with over 13 years of experience within the education sector. This podcast is all about helping educators and leaders build their inner coach so they can become confident, self-aware, and transform how they work and lead. If you are an educator or leader, then you are in the right place for coaching, mindset, and reflection. And today's episode is all about something foundational, something that shapes how you show up, make your decisions, and how you feel in your work as an educator or leader, and wider than that, in your personal life too. We're talking about values, and more specifically, how to discover your values as an educator or leader so that you can work in a way that feels aligned, grounded, and true to how you are. Now, this episode is inspired by a free workbook I've created that you can get called Discover Your Values. And inside it, I share that values help you to lead with clarity, confidence, and integrity, because I really, really believe that. So let's dive in. Why do values matter? Now, this is really key because actually our values are the inner foundation, our inner compass that guide everything that we do, often without us even realizing it. They influence how we respond under pressure, what gives us energy, what drains us, the decisions that we make, the boundaries we set, and the way that we lead others too. Now, I share in the workbook about how understanding our values helps us to stay energized, helps us to be resilient. And that's so important in education, where often there's quite a high emotional labor, and there's also constant decision making, which can leave you feeling quite stretched. When you are disconnected from your values, things feel hard, whereas when you're aligned with them, things feel clear. Now, the problem is that most educators or leaders, they spend years operating on autopilot, responding to needs, holding space, navigating expectations, and doing what they think they should be doing. Very rarely do they pause and ask, what is truly important to me? And this is a reflective prompt that I include in the workbook because it's such a powerful prompt that brings you back to yourself, not the role, not the pressure, not the educational system. It brings you back to you. Now, values aren't goals, they're not tasks, they're not things for you to tick off at all. It's not another to-do list. It is the qualities that matter most to you, the things that make you feel most like yourself. And some examples of these values are things like authenticity, compassion, balance, growth, leadership, creativity, fairness, stability. And it's always important to notice the ones that feel most like you. There's more than what I've just said there, and there's loads included in the workbook. But it's about choosing the ones that feel most aligned to you, not the ones that you think you should choose. Now, in the workbook, I share the process for how to discover your values. And that big question, what is truly important to me? And with that, it's about allowing yourself the space to journal, the space to pause, the space to think, and letting whatever comes up come up, and be really non-judgmental with that. Just trust the process. And sometimes that can be really hard because it can feel quite uncomfortable. Yet that space to just be is really important in getting under the skin of what is actually important to you. Now, within the workbook, there is a list that you can choose from in terms of these words that, might resonate with you in terms of values. And from that, it's really important that you narrow it down. So thinking about, choosing your top 10, what is truly important to me, and then looking at bringing it down to about 3 that you can really embody and that can really become your compass. So, what is most truly important to me? If I have that, what does that mean? which one of those out of the 10, is really, really feeling aligned to who I am, what really resonates with me. And then, once we've discovered those values, it's about looking at how you can invite more of those values into your life, making more of them a focus. And it might be something, you want to record on your phone, or maybe create a mood board of, or just make a note of somewhere that, you can keep coming back to when you're making those decisions, when you're having those conversations, when you're thinking about changes to your career. Does it align with those values? And it's important here to note that your values can change. So if you've done this activity before, it's always worth revisiting, and it might be something you want to revisit on a yearly basis, reevaluating, looking at that focus as things change in your life, because we're always growing, we're always changing. So, looking at how you can invite more of those values into your life, and looking at where you can honor them more, consistently, that might come from setting a boundary, saying yes to more things or different things. It might be creating more space, for rest, creativity, connection. It might also be asking for support in terms of what support do you need to bring these values more into focus consistently. And why is this important? So, I've talked through a bit of the process. I've talked through what can happen if we're not, aligned to our values. But why is it so important that as educators and leaders, we know and we understand and we feel aligned to our values? Now, when we know our values and we feel aligned to, how we live our life, how we are navigating, being an educator or leader, our decisions are made with much more confidence. We trust ourselves more. We have that self-assurance. We feel grounded, even in those more challenging moments. We lead with intention and purpose rather than reaction. And we show up in that way that feels really aligned. And that's absolutely what helps us to build our inner coach. And understanding our values is part of, building our inner coach. That part of you that guides, supports, and is going to steady you as you move forward as an educator or leader. So before we finish, I just want to give you a moment to reflect. And I want you to think about a recent situation that maybe felt uncomfortable, draining, or misaligned. And grab your journal, your notebook, or maybe your phone, and just take a moment to pause with these 3 questions, because these small reflections are going to help build self-awareness. It's going to help you understand, more greater, really, that, when things aren't aligned, it can really lead to potential conflict. And just remembering, having, that awareness of situations that felt uncomfortable, draining, or felt misaligned, actually, it builds that self-awareness, builds your inner coach, and that noticing is really important, so that you can potentially, if you wish, because there's always a choice there, do something differently next time. So what I'd like you to ask yourself is, which of my values wasn't being honored here? What would I have changed if I had led from my values? What do I want to do differently next time? Now, if today's episode has sparked some interest for you in discovering your values, I would love for you to download the free Discover Your Values workbook. You can find the link in the show notes, and it is a simple, reflective, and genuinely transformative workbook. Now, you can get it by signing up to my newsletter, and that link is easily accessible in the show notes, as I've just said. So inside, you'll find a full list of different values, guided prompts, and space to really explore what truly matters to you. And if you want more support with bringing those values into your leadership or your education, then you can always reach out. I would absolutely love to help you build that inner foundation. Now, thank you for listening to today's episode. I would love to hear your reflections. Please do reach out, come and chat with me over on my socials. All the links are in the show notes. And if you have enjoyed this episode and don't want to miss the next one, then please make sure you follow and subscribe, and also maybe share the episode with a colleague too. I will see you next time, and let's continue to build your inner coach together, one episode at a time.